Okay, so I'm gonna do this on my phone. I don't have any fancy camera. My kid is running around, but I'm gonna make the video um, because people want to hear my birthing story from what I've been told. So I'm gonna tell you. So, I was due on November 14th, 2017 to have Dakota. Um, I went to the doctor a week prior, and it was the first time that I had been checked, like, for dilation. And so I assumed that getting checked for dilation was like getting a pap smear. Like, they would just kind of crank you open and do a little something and then you'd be done. But no, no, no. Getting checked for dilation is a whole different situation. And Shorty like took the fingers and went up, and then she like hooked the right and then went up some more, and it was like, whoa, what are you doing? Where are your fingers going? Because nobody warned me about what being checked felt like. And it hurts. Getting checked to see if you are dilated is painful. He just poured all the chips on the floor. Okay, we'll clean it up. So when she did that, I was just like, I don't know, how I'm going to be able to get through labor when they check you, every so often. And she was like, I have the smallest fingers at the practice, so anybody else is going to be more intense because their fingers are going to be larger. Because at the practice that I went to, you get seen by every doctor in the practice during your pregnancy so that you're comfortable, or whatever doctor is on call when you go into labor. So yeah, she was like, I have the smallest finger, so anybody else is gonna be rough. And so like I begged her, like, please let me be induced. Like at this point this was on a Friday. I was due on a Tuesday. So this was the Friday before my due date. And I'm like, please, if there's any way. I was so tired of being pregnant, because anybody who's been pregnant can tell you the last like month feels like 20 years easily. So I begged her to induce me, and she was like, well, I'll be on call on Thursday. Mind you, again, I was due on Tuesday, so she was like, well, you'll be full term. You don't really have any medical reasons to be induced, but if you want to be induced that badly, we can do it on Thursday the 16th. And I was just like, yes, please, yes. And she gave me all the warnings. You're more likely for a C-section, and the contractions will be more intense than if you were to go in labor on your own, and blah blah blah. And I was just like, I don't care, get this kid out of me. So during between the Friday and the Thursday that I was induced, I tried everything that they tell you to do to try to induce labor naturally, and it didn't work. Not one thing, none of it. Everything they tell you to do, I did it. Ain't nothing worked. Nothing. So that Thursday, I woke up. I was due to be at the hospital at 6 o'clock. I woke up at 4:30, 4 o'clock. It was either 4 or 4:30. And I made myself a pot of spaghetti, just noodles, not sauce, just noodles, to try to, because they said to eat a lot of carbs before you come in, because once you get to the hospital, they won't let you eat, which is normal for hospitals. So I made myself some spaghetti, some butter, some salt, and tow it up. I was supposed to be there at 6 o'clock. We got there about 7. And I was freaking out the whole time, because I'm like, they're going to give my bed away. Like, somebody's going to come in active labor, and they're going to give my bed away, and they're going to say that I can't labor, or I'm going to have to wait to be induced because my bed's not available anymore. Like, I was freaking out. But I got there, told them who I was, and they walked me straight to my room, and everything was fine. So they gave me Pitocin to start the labor. I believe they increased the dosage every hour. I'm not positive. That whole day is kind of a blur, but I believe the dosage was increased every hour. So we got there at 7. I was hooked up and ready to go by like 7:15, because they were waiting for me. So yeah, so the first couple hours I was fine. It was just like, oh, I mean, I could feel the contractions, but it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm dying. And then the oh my God, I'm dying contractions started maybe 10:30-ish. And it wasn't even, oh my gosh, I'm dying. It was just like, oh, that really hurts. A lot worse than it did before. A lot worse than it did before. So, I got up, I walked around, I sat on the labor ball thing. And then I was still okay. Like, I was like, okay, I don't have to get the epidural yet. I'm straight. I initially said that I wanted to do it natural, but then I was like, you know what? If it's too painful, I don't like pain. There's no need for me to go through pain if I can do this with medication to stop the pain. Okay? So, I was fine until they came to check me to see how dilated I was, and I had a contraction in the middle of it. So, like, she came in and she could see on the charts that I was having a contraction. She was like, okay, well, I'll wait to check you until the contraction is over. So I'm thinking, okay, she's gonna check me real quick before the next contraction hits. At this point, the contractions were maybe 2 minutes apart, but they weren't lasting long. They were lasting maybe 30 seconds, but they were about two minutes apart. So that contraction ends. She goes in to check, and she's in there for a minute. So while she's in there, I have another contraction, and that was the most painful thing I've ever felt in my life. I don't even remember how dilated I was because it was so painful. And like, she's in there, and I mean, she's a nurse, so she's used to it. She was just chill, like, yeah, she's having a contraction. And I'm like, oh, like screaming. And she's like, yeah, she's having a contraction now. But it feels like just so relaxed and calm. And I'm like, if you don't get your hand out of me. So then she told me however many centimeters I was. And she was like, okay, we're going to break your water now. But once we break your water, the contractions are going to be closer together and more intense. And I was like, more intense than what I just felt while you were in there? And she was like, oh, yeah. And I was like, okay, well, before you come back in here to break my water, call the anesthesiologist and have him on standby and ready to come in as soon as you break my water, because I can't do that. Now, looking back, I wish I had at least waited to see what it was like, because the epidural really slowed down my labor. I really think I may have progressed a lot quicker if I had not gotten the epidural, because I was only like maybe 3 centimeters, maybe. Because when I got there, I was only 1 centimeter. So I may have been 3 centimeters by the time they gave me the epidural. And that was 4 hours into labor. So yeah. So anyway, they break my water. They have a really tough time breaking it with like the little crochet hook thingy. But then the anesthesiologist comes in. Literally, as soon as they break it, he comes in. I sit up. He does the thing. I may have felt 2 contractions between getting my water broken and getting the epidural. So it was nothing. And then after I got the epidural, it was smooth sailing. Like, I was perfectly fine. At first, it felt like it was only taking on one side, but then after maybe 20 minutes or so, I was completely numb from the waist down, and it was fine. So after that, I was chill. Like, slept, had popsicles, and then about, let me see, I got the epidural at like 11:30. So about 4 o'clock maybe, they came in and checked me, and they said I was 6 centimeters. Dakota. Really? They came in and checked me and said I was 6 centimeters. Okay, cool. They come back about an hour later. Still 6 centimeters. No big deal. They come back about an hour after that, and I was still 6 centimeters. So by then my doctor was there, and she was like, we had this discussion about the increased risk for cesarean section if you got induced. At this point, for about, that was like 6:30. At this point, it's been about 2.5 hours, and you have not progressed at all. So we're gonna try some things, but just letting you know, we're kind of moving into C-section territory. And I'm like, okay, whatever, fine. Like, at that point, I didn't care how the kid got here, just get him out, okay? So like, they did different positions, they laid me in different positions, and I remember at 7 o'clock, this was when Shondaland was all Shondaland. So it was Grey's Anatomy, and then How to Get Away with Murder, and then Scandal. And so I was like, okay, it's 7 o'clock, so this kid can't come till after 10 because I got to watch my stories. Again, I had an epidural at this point, so I was not in immense pain. So I didn't care. I was chilling. And so they did me in these different positions. Long story short, at about 8:30-ish, she came back and she was like, okay, you haven't progressed. You're still 6 centimeters, and you're getting a fever. So because you're getting a fever, that puts you at risk for developing an infection, and that could harm the baby. So we got to do a C-section. And I was like, okay, like, I'm not even gonna lie. The only reason I was semi-upset is because I knew I wasn't gonna watch Scandal. And Dakota was born on the night of the winter finale for Scandal. So I had been waiting, weeks for this. And this was the finale. So, the finales were always really good. Whether it was the winter finale or the spring finale, Scandal was good on finale night. So, she's like, you're gonna have to have a C-section. I'm like, okay, whatever. She's like, okay, so I'm gonna go get the crew, blah, blah, blah. We'll be back in to prep you, and then we'll take you to the OR. Fine. So I was fine because, like I said, I had prepared myself, like she told me before, that there was a chance that I would have a C-section. I had cousins. Honestly, even before I had ever gotten pregnant, I assumed that I would have to have C-sections because everyone who I had been present for their birthing experience had C-sections. So I was like, this is just normal. This is what hospitals do. Which I later found out there's a reason behind all that. But neither here nor there at that point. I was fine. And so then after she left out, Dakota's clumsy. He's fine. My mom and my aunt were like, well, let's pray. And I'm like, okay, fine. Like, we pray over everything. And so they're praying. And that's kind of when everything hit me. And I got like super overwhelmed, and I was okay. Still, and so they prayed, and then they said amen, and I was like amen, and then I was fine, and then like 2 seconds later I just lost it. Like, I'm just sobbing, and I'm just like, and they're like, it's fine, like, but it was just so much more than just the surgery. There was, it was everything came down on me at once. I had never even been worried about like having a baby, if I could handle having a kid and being a mom. I've been good with babies since I was a baby. You know what I mean? Like, I've been taking care of babies, babysitting, changing diapers, burping kids all my life. For real. Like, if you ask my family, for my whole life, me and babies, it's been a thing. So I was never even worried about it until that moment. Like, when it became very real, like, okay, you're really about to have a baby. It's your baby, and you're going to take it home and raise it. And it was just like, whoa. On top of the fact that I'm about to go in and have major surgery. On top of the fact that I just there's so much I hadn't even thought of. And at that moment, when it became real that he was coming and he would be there in the next hour or so, everything just became very overwhelming, and I freaked out and I cried and I sobbed. And Dakota's father had no idea what to do because I'm always so put together and, okay. So the fact that I was like completely not myself, he was just like, who is this person? Like, why is she, But But anyway, I was fine. I just had to cry for like 2 minutes and then I was fine. And so they came in and they got me and they took me to the OR. And really everything after that is a blur. The only thing I really, really remember is that it was freezing in that OR. It was so cold. And I'm sure there's a medical reason for why it must be Arctic freeze in an operating room. But when all you have on is a paper thin gown and maybe a sheet over you. I don't even know if I had that. Because I couldn't feel my legs. So my legs being cold didn't matter. But everything else was freezing. And I remember shaking uncontrollably. And I assumed that it was from the fact that it was so cold. But I later found out that the extra medicine that they get, Dakota, for real, medicine that they give you actually causes you to get the shakes as well. So it was a combination of the two. But really everything after that is a blur. I remember them sitting me up. I remember them giving me the extra epidural. At least I believe it's still epidural that they give you to completely numb you for the C-section. I don't really remember much else. I remember it seemed like forever. It seemed like it took forever for them to get him out. I know they wheeled me back. It was like 8:50, 8:55, because I was like, when it took them a minute to come back, I was like, well, at least I'll see the beginning of Scandal. And then like right before it came on, they came in, they're like, okay, we're ready to go. And I'm like, but he was born at 9:49. So they got me at like 8:55. He was born at 9:49. But that was like walking to the OR, giving me the medicine, actually cutting me open and doing everything to get him out. And it took a minute even before they cut me open. I guess they were waiting for the medicine to take. I don't really know what was going on. I had so much going on in my head at that point. I couldn't process anything else. But yeah. So I laid there. I remember before I had him, a lot of people said, you know, you'll feel pressure, you'll feel tugging. I don't remember feeling any of that. I just remember sitting there waiting and hoping that he cried, because I hear so much about babies not crying when they come out, and mom's kind of freaking out about it. And I'm like, please let him cry. Just let him cry. Let him cry. Baby, Dakota Anthony, I feel like as soon as they made the first pull to try to get him out, he lost it. He was just like, listen, I made it very clear that I was not ready to come out before you got induced. I made it very clear that I was not ready to come out after you were induced. And here you are still taking me out of my comfort zone, and I am not pleased. So he screamed instantly. Dakota was screaming. I remember them putting him like over the, what do you call that thing? The cover or the drape that they had. And I couldn't really see him. I remember saying, I can't see him. I can't see him. But they whisked him away so quickly to the warming table, which was like behind my head. Not directly, but kind of over. But saying all that to say, I couldn't see him. And I was freaking out because I'm like, I can't see my kid. Like, I'm laying here. I can't move. I can't feel my legs. I hear my kid crying, but I can't see him. Like, I want to see him. I want to know what he looks like. Who does he look like? And so, yeah. But then I hear these stories about these women who didn't see their babies for hours. I didn't have that. So I had him. They did everything to get me closed up. They did not take him out of the room while they closed me up. They just had him on the warming table. Then they swaddled him up and gave him to his dad. His dad brought him over to me, and that was really when I first saw him. But that was like maybe 5 minutes after he was born. And then after they closed me up, his father handed him to me, and that was it. Like, I didn't have that experience of him going away for hours and not being able to see him because he's in the nursery. And, well, first of all, the hospital that I had him at, they don't, I mean, I imagine they have a nursery, but when you have a baby there, the baby stays with you the whole time. Like, there's no sending the baby out in the middle of the night for you to sleep. Like, no, the baby stays in your room, in the little plastic bassinet thingy. So yeah, 9:49 p.m., November 16th, 2017, he was here. And that was that.